Well, hello everybody, and welcome to Chit-Chat Tuesday with the wonderful Carol Green. And I've been lucky to meet Carol Green, psychic medium, on several occasions. And yeah, I think that she has got such a fascinating story, and several things that I've done with Carol. Is one, I went to a demonstration where she was proving to us that we all have some psychic abilities, and me, who I thought that I was as psychic as a brick, actually managed to pick up on a few things with Carol. It's just interpreting what was being said. But Carol's also known as the Anne Robinson of the mediumship world, which I like, and also as well, I almost called you Anne then, Carol, and then also as well, Carol's produced some CDs as well, which is some mediumship. So we're going to be asking some questions shortly. I'm just going to say hello to some people that are appearing and said hello. So I want to say hello to Anne, Michelle, Patricia is here at the moment, and if I get chance, I'll be saying hello to people that are coming up, and I'll be asking Carol some questions, but also as well, this is your opportunity to ask Carol any questions that you like. And Carol runs development classes, she does platform, and you can generally see her around the Gloucestershire area. And I'm not sure if you travel further than that, but you do Zoom sessions as well, don't you, as well, with students. So starting off, Carol, I wanted to talk to you because we have spoken before when you were at the Isborne. I have interviewed you before when you were at the Isborne. Hello to Antoinette and Mick as well. But I wanted to go into, to begin with, your very first psychic experience when you felt unseen hands touching your elbow. Can you talk about that, please?
Yeah,
really
you've got a good memory, Paul. Well, good evening, anyway. Good evening, everybody else. Yeah, I mean, I was, excuse me, I was a civil servant at the time, so I'm a pretty practical lady, you know, brought up, didn't know the word spirit, didn't understand anything clairvoyant, never in my remit, to be perfectly honest. But I had what I like to call an emotional breakdown. And, you know, one of those periods in your life where, you know, you sort of got yourself into a bit of a muddle. And I'd lost a lot of weight. I was quite weak. And I woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning. And as I was walking around the bed to go and get a cup of tea, I literally felt a hand on each elbow. Now, at that time, because of the way I was, quite shut down, I was like, oh, thank you. Really weird. Went down, got a cup of tea, went back to bed. I would like to say the next morning I woke up and went, Eureka, I'm healed, but that wasn't the case. And I kept getting the thought about going into the Spiritualist Church. Now, obviously, I learned as the time went on that we call it being impressed with a thought. And so I went to the local Spiritualist church, had no idea. I had to go and find it first. I had no idea where I was going, just walked in, sat down for a service. Very pleasant. Nobody spoke to me. Didn't know what was going on whatsoever. But I'd had a sort of a traditional Church of England background when I was younger. So we had the hymns and the prayers. So it was all pretty okay until they come to the bit where there was a lady giving messages that I was sat there just wondering what on earth was going on, quite frankly. But anyway, because of the way I was, I went back the next week because it was actually nice and peaceful. And went back every week, actually, so I didn't have much of a life at the time. That's what I usually like to say. And then I was invited to join what they call the Open Circle. This is at Cheltenham Spiritualist Church in Bennington Street. So I turned up on this Thursday night, not knowing what was going to happen. 7:30 prompt, the door was locked. The lights were lowered. There were some small red lights in the room. And all these people were sat in a circle. Whereas a lady called May Scott was the president, and she was taking the evening. And she said, oh, well, let's all go into the quiet. Well, I didn't even know what that meant. So I just followed everybody else, and they were all sort of sat there with their eyes closed, and they had their hands out like this in front of them. So I thought, oh, that's obviously what you're meant to do. I better copy them. So I did. And then sat there, keep peeking, because I just felt very odd. And at the end of the session, after about an hour, this lady went round and spoke to everybody that was there that evening. And she used to say, and what did you get, dear? She was a very sweet little Welsh lady, born into spiritualism. So she would ask everybody, and people would say things like, well, I saw this lovely blue colour, or I saw a butterfly. And some of the more experienced would actually give a message to somebody and say, well, I've got your granddad here. And I'm sat there going, this is really weird. What am I doing here? And then she'd come to me and she said, and what did you get? And I went, well, nothing. Oh, okay. And this went on for about 3 months. And I don't know why I kept going, because I just did. And every week I used to say, no, I didn't get anything. And I really thought I'd lost the plot, quite frankly. And one day there was another lady in the chair called Sylvia Charliewood. Bless her, she's recently passed. And I'm sat next to her. And so when she asked the question and I said, oh, nothing. And she said, oh, yes, you did, dear. And I sort of pulled myself up and looked at her a bit strange. And she used a phrase that nobody had said to me. She said, it's like a thought that goes in your mind and keeps repeating. And I'd been sat there thinking I was daydreaming with this picture going like a Rolodex going round in my head. So I described it. And this lady opposite said, oh, yeah, that's my uncle. And I'm like, this is really even more weird, because I was sitting there expecting to see people in the physical walk up and down the room, because I knew no better, quite frankly. And so I gave another message later that night. So I thought I was the best thing since sliced bread. I was going to be a medium next week, aren't I? I'm going to be working up on that platform where they turn up every Sunday. And it's almost like what I say in retrospect is almost like it's the carrot that got you interested. Because being a civil servant and a Virgo, I wanted to know, what's that about? What sense does it make? So I then started to pursue it. So I turned up every week, got invited to a private circle. Then I was moved with my job to London, and I was there for 5 years, and that's where I did the majority of my training. College of Psychic Studies, beautiful church in Notting Hill, Independent Spiritualist Mission, the Spiritualist Association of Great Britain. So you could go in London, you could go to St. every night and every weekend. There was always something going on. And so I was, like soaking it up like a sponge. And because I now teach, I feel that I went through all that and made so many mistakes purely so I would understand it more, so that I'm able to teach it to, budding mediums today. All
Brilliant.
the pitfalls, yeah, because there's a lot of pitfalls, and I was rubbish. I'll be honest, I was quite rubbish because I believed everything, so it would all come out of my mouth thinking it was right. Yeah.
So I just want to say, and that's brilliant, I want to say, Jacqueline, hello. Jules, hello. Charles, hello. I think I said hello to Anne before. There's quite a few of you popping up. Gillian, thank you for popping up. Gaz, hello. I think that's everybody. If I've missed anybody, I really do apologise. So what I wanted to say, and please ask your questions to Carol as well if you've got some questions to Carol. Carol's a fantastic medium. And I know that when you did like a bit of development with a group of us with the Earsborne Open Days, one of the things that I was getting was more metaphors in images. And if you can say about how to interpret a lot of the metaphors, because I think that when you people that are new to that, they just sort of see something like what I saw was a rainbow coloured ball just on the grass, and then you interpret it in such a way which just meant that it was right for the lady. Whereas I would have probably said something like something maybe about children, or about balls. Do you like to play with balls, or things like that? So can you talk about how the metaphors and how you can interpret the metaphors back again?
Yeah, it's not a subject you can just give a straight answer to, as all of this work is, unfortunately. So obviously it comes with experience. But what you have to remember when you're working with the spirit world, which is the intelligence of spirit, our loved ones who have passed over, they will use your own attributes to bring that information forward. So like yourself, you saw images. Some people never see them. Some people feel. some people sense, some people hear. There's many aspects, but they're using you and what they know that you can understand, and also what's in your memory bank. Because there's no good showing me something from long ago that I wouldn't know what it was. I wouldn't be able to interpret it. So they would perhaps, classic example I often say is, if I'm showed in my mind's eye a stick of rock, I get an image of a stick of rock, that immediately tells me that I'm talking about the seaside, obviously. That's an obvious logic. My next thought will be, am I looking at Blackpool Tower or am I looking at the cliffs of Dover? So linking the two together, I'm being shown Blackpool Tower. So I have memories of a seaside holiday that would have been very regular to you, but they're very much on the proper seafront rather than in a natural setting. So I'm logically linking the two bits together. Well, of course, then the skeptics say, well, everybody's been to the seaside. Well, actually, no, they haven't. And not everybody's got those memories of everlastingly going. Whereas I used to go every year, we used to go for 2 weeks to my grandparents who lived at the seaside. So if somebody gives me that, it's a really good memory for me. All right. So you're basing stuff that you know, and you're looking at logic to link it together. And I often say, so in that box of that information, by asking the questions of the image you're seeing, you start to feel when it's right. It's a feeling that links it, that you just know. It's like an affirmation. Does that make sense?
It does completely, yes.
And what you'll find is, as you progress, whenever I get that stick of rock, it always means the same thing to me. So it's the symbolism that you get, and some people make a note of it so that they remember it. And you'll always get that symbol. It will always take you down that path of, in that box, that information. But it is literally practice. And if you get like animals, it's like, look at the characteristic of an animal. It doesn't mean to say that that person has got that animal, but look at the characteristic of it. If you look at household items, what are they used for? If they're not a memory that somebody's got in their house, what would they be used for? So, for example, spin dryer, an old-fashioned spin dryer. Well, if I said to a person, I'm being shown a spin dryer, and they look at me very blankly, I know immediately, obviously, because I've observed their reaction. I've not read it, I've observed it, so I know immediately to check. Well, that could mean that their head's spinning. It could mean that life around them is spinning out of control. Does that make sense? I'm linking and I'm looking at logic to equate it to a person's life. And it is just practice and experience that you get used to doing that.
It's not a question, but I want to highlight this because I think that so many people can also resonate with this. Patricia says, I love to be able to, but I just can't. So I think when you say you can't, that's a belief in itself. But have you got any stories of either somebody you've worked with that obviously you are able to share and really thought they couldn't, and then actually are able to pick up? And what was some of the missing links maybe that they had which stopped them from thinking that they could or couldn't do the mediumship?
Yeah. Well, I always say I believe everybody can do it. It's like everybody can paint, but some people are better than others, aren't they? Some people do a matchstick man, some people do Van Gogh. So in this work, because you're using your senses, all of your own personal senses, which we've all got, it's learning to understand them. It's learning to know which is your senses that you are using. It's learning to know when it's your mind giving you information. And I like to break it right down into the basics when I'm starting with a new student, so that they know what energy is, they know what is their own energy, they know when energy is around them and they are connecting to it, which is the psychic, right? And you get a good psychic, they can be excellent, but they're reading all the energy of the person. So your history is in that first layer of the aura, like the blueprint around you, and they're just connecting to it by, in their mind, asking a question. So if you came to me as a student, you were, doing a practice, I might say in my mind, oh, what was Paul like when he was 10? And I would immediately get an impression of something. I mean, you were always a thinker, weren't you?
Yes. Yeah.
Always a bit introspective, always checking everything out. Because I immediately was shown in my mind when I asked that question, a very quiet boy, but very intelligent and watching all the time. Not somebody that's running around climbing trees.
Yes.
And it is literally, it's that continued practice that you start to build it up together, right? And then if you understand that energy and you then build the next block, I call it, we start with observation. So you're being aware of what your client is looking like and understanding. I have to stress, you are not reading the body language. You have to be very careful that you don't do that. Then you've got your own intuition, which we've all got. And it's more of about a feeling and a sensing. Then we've got the psychic, which is connecting. And then we have the mediumship, which is receiving. So to be a medium, you have to be psychic. But to be psychic, you don't actually have to be a medium. So I like to break it down so that everybody understands that which senses they're working with. They get to know what it's telling them, right? And they get to know when their brain has come in and they're making it up and they're making a story up.
Yeah.
It is a commitment and it is a lot of practice, but it's worth it. So I believe everybody, and like you said, to say you can't, with all due respect to the lady, it's more about perhaps she hasn't got a lot of belief in herself. All right. Or, perhaps she started at the top end and not been shown the basics.
Yes. Absolutely, and I've got one that makes perfect sense, Carol. Definitely, I've got one here from Charles. I'm new to seeing my mind's eye, and I'm getting cloudy images. Can I do anything to clear them? Is that something that you get, people, and is there anything that Charles can do to clear them?
Yeah, he just needs to ask.
Yeah.
Make it sharp. Okay. Make it sharper.
Yeah.
If he's working on a psychic level, so he's connecting on that way. This is where the psychology bit comes in. He's telling himself, he's telling his own senses, you need to make this sharper. If he's working with spirit and he's receiving that information, he needs to tell the spirit people, you need to make this sharper because I'm not seeing it, I'm not understanding it.
Good. Jacqueline says here, I've done 8 developments and I can communicate to some degree. It's brilliant. So that's good to hear. Well done, Jacqueline. Yeah. What I like to say is that, and this was actually during the interview that I did with you a few years ago now, and you say it's important not to get out too soon because you could fall flat on your face. And if you can go through the process of when you begin to feel you're getting some confidence to do platform, the best way of going about that?
Well, to be perfectly honest, it's developing in a circle or with a group where you have a trainer who's very encouraging, but also helps you with your confidence. The reason I say about if you set out too soon, that's more about the humanistic part of the work. All right, because most of us lack confidence. Most of us think we can't do it. We have nerves. Even I still get nerves before I start. So humanistically, we can cause ourselves a little bit of a break. All right, but you're dealing with people and you're dealing with the public. So if you're doing a demonstration or even a church service, not everybody in that room is understanding of it. A lot of people are either grieving or they've got stuff going on in their life, which makes the energy around them can be a bit erratic. You've got people there who are desperate for a message and they almost like suck in the energy to draw. So you have to deal with all of that stuff on the human level, that whatever comes and happens around you, as a person, you can deal with it.
Yeah.
And I often say to my students, if you are publicly working and something goes a little bit wrong and you've tried and it's still not working, you know that you are capable and confident enough to deal with anything if you stand up and say, I'm terribly sorry, but I'm not getting it. It's not working tonight. And you stop working. Because that's the
Good.
biggest fear for most people is they're going to look stupid. They're not going to get anything. People aren't going to like them. Big fear. But if you can stand and look yourself and go, I'm working to the best of my ability and I'm being honest, it really doesn't often happen. But I have had that occasion and I literally stopped because it can do. Circumstances happen. But it's about how you gain knowledge of people. In this work, you grow yourself as much as anything else. It stretches you. All right. So as you increase with your mediumship and gain more knowledge because of that, that lady, 8 years, well done her. And I would encourage her. Don't say some. I reckon she can do a lot better than what she thinks. All right.
Yes.
And I would say to her, keep going, keep going. All right. And it's like, I slightly lost my thread then. Always the way when you're talking, isn't it? Excuse me.
Sorry.
It's like standing in front and being not egotistical, but calm and confident enough to know that you are able to address any situation that is brought to you. And that's about the human nature. That's about people. That isn't about the spirit world, because the spirit world will always be there. They literally will always be there. And we're that bit in the middle. So, I've had people disruptive. I've had people who've been drinking. So I've worked in skittle alleys as well as churches.
Oh dear.
But people say to me sometimes, why would you work in those conditions? And I said, because those people will never go into a church and they still have grief and there is still knowledge that you can touch them with.
Yes. Indeed.
So why not? Let's not be precious about this. Most people are the same in some instance, so they all need something, don't they?
Indeed. Some people said the picture's frozen. It'll just let me know how it's come in for everybody. That would be really, really good. Now, I know sometimes you get people coming in couples. You told during your talk a very touching story about two people and one had passed over. And this one gentleman kept coming back to sort of see if it would be his time soon. He lived quite many more years. Are you happy to share that story?
Yeah. Well, it's funny. It's actually funny you brought that up, and people will have to trust us that we weren't discussing this, because I actually spoke to a member of their family yesterday who lives abroad, and I was doing a reading for them because they wanted to speak to him. It was the daughter of the gentleman.
Yeah.
And this couple, for several years, they came together, getting on a few in years. The sweetest couple. A second marriage, both of them, very much together. They almost sort of thought the same. And they always turned up wanting to know if the family in spirit was happy with them. How lovely is that? Not looking for direction, just want to have a chat, because obviously they even had children in one of them, and as well as parents. And then the lady, bless her, I watched her get frailer and frailer, and I thought, I'm not going to see her again. And then her husband phoned up and he said, can I come? And I went, of course you can. So he used to turn up I said to him, come when you feel the need. And we worked out an arrangement on that level, because normally I won't see anybody for 6 months. But because of the situation, I thought, no, it's not going to hurt. So he used to turn up whenever he came with 2 bunches of flowers, one from him, one from his wife, always the same flowers, always the same colour. And we would go, and he'd always bring me pictures, or he'd bring items that she'd used to do some wonderful handicraft stuff. And he said, I've just brought this to show you. So it was as much having a chat as anything. And she never let us down. She always came through, always gave me something else that I didn't know. And at the end, he'd always say, can I go now? And I said, no, you can't. For the sake of, his name wasn't this, but I'll call him Tom. That's not his name. I said, no, Tom, darling, you can't go yet. It's not your time. You'd come back the next time. Can I go now? I just want to be with her. And he was 92 when he passed. And he'd had a good 4 or 5 years on his own, bless him. He wasn't depressed or maudlin. You know, he had a family and he was keeping himself active. But that's all he wanted. Can I go? And he came the last time and I just looked at him and he asked me the question. And we have to be very, very careful. But because I knew him so well, I just looked at him and I never said anything. And he said, oh, you never said anything. I said, no, darling, I didn't, did I? And I didn't see him again. But I heard the family phone me up when he was in hospital because his wife had said to me, please tell him to keep asking because I will come to him just before he goes. And he will physically see me. And then he'll know I'm waiting. Yeah. So when you're working, you're really trusting what you're getting when something like that comes through. But absolutely, she was adamant about it. And I had a call from the daughter, and he was in hospital, and he was on those last hours. And she said, oh, he's really distressed because he hasn't seen her. And she said she would. And he's getting very, very tetchy and very, upset. So I said, well, just give us a minute. And I phoned a colleague of mine and I said, could you just link in and see if something's going on, what's going on? And in this work, sometimes you really just have to trust what you're getting. And it makes no sense to you as a worker, but you really have to trust that I know that's what I'm getting. I know my team. I know how I work. I'm going to go with it. So when I linked in, it was quite interesting because I could see the lady, but I also could see there was a slight problem that she couldn't get through. So my colleague and I did some work clearing as we would know how to do it. And then I had a call about 2.5 hours later from the daughter saying, I saw it happen. She said he suddenly sat up and looked and the biggest smile came over his face and he just went calm. She said, and he's gone. Oh. So how lovely is that?
That is lovely.
Sad but lovely. Do you know what I mean? I was quite privileged actually to be part of it.
Indeed. Indeed.
So they're definitely reunited. They came back together yesterday.
That's lovely, and it's nice to know that you're still in contact with the family as well. I'm just checking. Is my picture still clear enough? Because I think it might have just dropped out. Do I look clear enough still on the or have I gone a bit fuzzy looking?
Well, you just sort of flashed for a second, but you look fine to me. But there was all of a sudden there was a sort of a flash.
Yeah, I've noticed. I don't know what's going on at the moment, but I just want to check in with everyone. If anybody says I look blurred, please just say in the comments.
I have to say I do get quite a few problems when I'm using the equipment.
Okay. So yeah, if you talk about that, that would be actually really good. And that wasn't kind of a planned link to this, but just sort of say some of the problems that happens when you've done your online sessions, which more and more of us are doing now during these since lockdown. But so you can say some of the problems that can happen with technology.
Well, I'll go back before Zoom actually, because when I was a civil servant and I worked in London, I was a PA. So everybody's getting all very techie at the time. And I would do something and my boss used to come out and said, why's that happened? And I said, well, it's perfectly normal. He said, well, it doesn't happen when I use mine and I do that command. Why has it happened? And I said, oh, I shouldn't worry about it because I noticed over time that sometimes I'd get almost like a surge of electricity and it would not quite blow it up, but it would cause a problem. My late sister, if I ever went to visit her husband used to come straight out. Don't let her in the kitchen. Don't let her lean on any of the electrical goods because apparently every time I left, something went wrong. The dishwasher would break, the washing machine would break, the light would break. And I thought, oh, they're just winding me up and laughing. But it became a little bit too much that I started thinking, oh, it must be a surge of electricity. So now when we're working on Zoom, especially when we're doing a trance, I do a closed trance group. Get a lot of what I call pixelations, and it's really fuzzy. It looks like you need to really sharpen the picture completely, and then as soon as I stop working, it goes clear. And then quite often the students will say, I can see this absolute white light behind you. It's like this, the reflection, and it sort of moves with you. And then as soon as I stop working, it stops. And one of the students, just a couple of weeks ago, she came online and we all went, why are you so red? And the whole screen was red. Literally the whole screen. You could see her, but her face and everything, it was all red. And we finished the session and we all closed down, and all of a sudden her screen went clear.
Mad. In a good way.
Well, yeah, we're fascinated because we're like, we always look, what's causing this? What light have you got? What equipment are you using? What equipment have you got near it? You always look to discount on a practical level. And then you can get to the potential of, this is possibly something that's happening.
Yes. Yeah.
Because you shouldn't ever really completely, utterly believe everything. Because you can delude yourself quite easily.
Yeah.
I've got one person, we were getting a lot of, it's almost like an electromagnetic field. It sounds like a train chugging. I have to keep putting them on mute. But we've started hearing the odd word. So we're getting a little bit excited, possibly, that what's going to happen with that. So,
yeah. So the question which I'm going to ask is that quite a lot of venues, particularly if they're older pubs you work in, may have like own resident spirits. How, as somebody's a medium, are you able to tune out from the spirits that are in the pub itself to the ones that are trying to communicate? And do you ever find that some of them can be a bit mischievous and try and jump in?
Well, there's one word that links with that, and that's discipline. That's, I think, why they used to call me Anne Robinson, because I believe firmly in discipline. All right.
Yeah.
And I go back to what I said about how you learn, about how you understand your energy. So you build your space. Okay. So mentally, in my mind, I imagine myself in this circle. So everything in that is me working, my team, and any loved ones that want to join. I'm not interested. This sounds a bit hard, but I'm not interested in anything outside that. I can't do my job if I'm being pulled and directed.
Yes, exactly.
So you learn to build that space up. That makes sense. And it is a discipline, because it is a discipline. But I have been to places, and one place springs to mind. There was a place called the Circle of Light in Uckington in Cheltenham. And they used to have regular demonstrations before the lockdown. And there was what I used to call a spirit caretaker. So there was a caretaker who I feel that was connected with the building from when it was originally. It was some kind of religious group that owned it. And I was working there once, and over the years of going there, I became aware of this gentleman. And as long as I acknowledged him when I went in, he never interfered. He just would stand in the corner and watch. But I was late this one day, and I went rushing through the door, as is my wont, rushed up to the platform, stood up, started working, and behind me there was a very small, it looked like a miniature lampstand, but it had a candle in it. And all of a sudden I had this clunk and this smell, and it was like, what was that? And it had fallen over and started to set light to this shade. Nothing around it, not a wobbly table, nobody knocked it. It just fell over, and I went, oh, it's a bit weird. Because I was rushing, I just started talking again. And lo and behold, the one on the other side then went over. And it was at that point I became aware of him, and I apologized and said, I'm so sorry, I didn't acknowledge you. Please don't do that anymore. You speak to them like you do normal people.
Yes,
you know what I mean? Like I'm talking to you. And immediately then calmed down. It was his way of his attracting attention. If he's not happy, he was letting me know, excuse me, don't forget I'm here. This is my premises. which is slightly different from if I'm doing a clearing.
Yes, I was going to ask about that.
Yeah.
I was going to ask some interesting stories when you're doing a clearing. And I'm also wondering what tends to happen. Do you find that you clear the spirits so they move on, or do you sometimes have it that both spirit and owners of the house live together more happily? So if you've got, well, either type stories like that would be really good, but yeah, there's some very interesting stories with the house clear would be good.
Yeah, couple I knew, she moved into his house. They were going to get married and everything like that. Both very aware. And they said, we've got a problem with a lady in the house. And we think it was a lady that owned the house before us. Could you come and have a look? We're not worried, but we just want to check it out. So I went over, got invited to dinner as well. So that was a bonus, wasn't it?
Definitely.
And so yes, it was the lady that used to live in the house, and she, it was her home and it was her kitchen. And because they were, a new woman had moved into the house, they were starting to make changes. So she started to make her presence felt. So I confirmed who it was, and I said, well, do you want me to ask her to leave? And they said, oh no, we're quite happy for her to be here. We just needed to check who it was, as long as she doesn't keep causing a problem. So again, you're talking to the spirit intelligence. It's like talking to your friend next door, and you're just saying, would you mind very much? Are you happy about that?
Indeed.
But another case, you would go and you've got what I call quite severe disruption. And there is sometimes no connection with the house or the people. But you may have a spirit entity who perhaps wasn't that nice in this world and isn't much better in the other world, or as you say, can be mischievous. I have met that some mediums say, oh, there's no such thing as a bad spirit. Well, I don't actually agree with that, because I've met them. And you've got to be quite strong, because if you get angry, they will feed on that fear. If you get frightened, they'll feed on it. So you do what we call, you live them away. Right? But you have to be very firm, because once spirit law is activated, they cannot stay there, because they can't.
Of course.
Right?
Of course.
So you go in, you check everything. I always used to do it with a friend of mine who sadly passed. And what we would do, we would go around the house and independently check it. And then we'd get together and compare notes. And if we got very similar, we knew we were on the right lines. All right. I have to admit, a lot of the times I would go and find that I had to do marriage guidance counselling.
Okay.
My friend used to say, oh, I'll leave this one to you then. And what would, slightly going off track, but what would happen, a family member would activate a lot of problems in the house. And you'd get there and there might be the granny waiting for you on the doorstep saying, thank goodness you come. Could you tell them this? Could you? And they were more about helping their families. But they would activate things quite severely because they obviously couldn't get through to them. So that's a sort of slightly, it's not amusing, but it could be amusing sometimes.
Yeah.
But if you got one that is really shouldn't be there, who could feel quite intimidated about. I've had them rattling the doors. I've had them stopping me going through a door. I've gone in and found all this awful writing on walls. That's why I say I can't say they don't exist, because I've experienced these things, and it's not experienced it in my mind. I've experienced it in a physical sense.
Yes, indeed.
So you sort of take that deep breath, you pull your team in, because you've always got to have your protection around you, and you almost sort of stand up to them and you ask them, why are you here? What are you doing? And sometimes you find that they're frightened. Sometimes you find they're lost, because in their mindset, what they were like in this world, they've carried it with them. For example, a lady I knew, her father-in-law, he hung himself, and big shock to everybody. And she called me out and she said, and she was a worker as well. And she said, he keeps coming in my son's room. Son was a teenager. She said, and it's freaking him out. So he's not listening to me. Can you come over? So I did. Connected with the gentleman. I said to him, what's the problem? Why are you frightening your grandson? He said, because I'm so sorry. And I didn't realise the effect it would have on him. I want to say sorry to him. And I said, well, you need to step forward properly into the spirit world. You need to, we call it stepping into the light. You need to step in the light, my darling, and then, you know, you can get some healing, and then you can come back and you can help. And he said, oh no, he said, I'm not allowed to. I said, what do you mean you're not allowed to? Well, it's a sin because I committed suicide. But that was his earthly religious belief, that he had committed a sin, so he wasn't allowed to move forward. And whatever, I could not get through to him, I could not persuade him. And in the end, I said, well, you still can't stay here, because you can't stay here. So I moved him forward. He more or less agreed to stop doing it. And then 6 months later, I was doing a public demonstration and his family were there. And in the break, I went out to see them and he came running up to me. It sounds silly to say it like that, but you know, made his presence felt. And he said, I'm ready. I understand. I'm ready. So he'd sort of been very sad for those 6 months and had to process and couldn't bear it anymore. And we literally did there in this garden, in this public place, we said, right, okay then, my darling, let's get you through the door. Yeah. Where you're going to be safe. So do you see, a person's mindset and their upbringing can sometimes manifest, if you like, what they believe it's going to be.
Yeah, belief, you know, and it sounds like in the spirit world is such a strong thing. It can make you be able to do things and not do things as well. But, you know, I'm glad that eventually, you know, he understood and went through to the light. Patricia says here, I have a lot of things thrown lately in my house. Could it be someone trying to get my attention? Well, I would think so, but Carol's the one to answer that one. So things being thrown, what does that tend to be about?
It could be one or two things. I mean, it could be literally somebody trying to get their attention. Quite often when that happens, you will think of the person in the spirit world quite a lot. They will come to mind or you will be reminded of them. And, you know, quite often that is the person who's trying to get your attention. But there is another way, and that is like, and it's an energy transference. It depends, you know. Is there a lot of emotion in the house? Is there illness, stress, everything like that? And it's again like that electromagnetic force. It's like it will find a spot and it will move something. So it's like an electrical charge built up of those emotions that will literally, I know that sounds odd and I'm trying to simply put it.
No, it's fine.
But it literally can move something. But it's like thunder and lightning, isn't it? You know, it's a force that comes together and it goes bang like this, and it can be the same thing. So it's not always necessarily spirit. You have to look at what's going on in that person's life or in that home or in the families around them.
Yes.
And then you can think, but if she's concerned, it depends if Patricia is in any way in development or understanding. If she's not happy about it, she needs to just firmly say out loud or in her mind, well, you can stop doing that, like you would to anybody else, you know?
Yes.
Or if she's not experienced, to get somebody in just to double check it out. That's all right. But I will say this, I know that there are a lot of people who charge a lot of money to do clearings, because I've seen it advertised. Well, because there's certain things in this world you can't actually prove, right? I think it's only acceptable. This is only my opinion. I don't charge for a clearing, but I might charge for my petrol.
Yes, of course.
Because you know what it's like these days, you know, it's a bit expensive, depending on how far I've gone.
Yeah, that's good of you.
And then, but it's trying to bring some kind of honesty to the work, to be honest. It's nice of you to say that.
Yeah.
But also, I often say to people, if I've done a clearing, whatever you do, Do not sit there talking about it. Don't ring your friends and tell them what happened. Leave it for 48 hours, get on with your life and ignore it. Because I try to explain, it's like you cleared the energy, but it's like a jelly that needs to be set. Because otherwise you just bring it all back in and it's a waste of time then.
Exactly.
People get very, very curious. So as much as you might sort of clear something, they then start going, oh, I wonder if it's gone. I wonder. And they literally start, picking at the scab and bring it all back in again.
Yeah, so yeah, get on with your life. It's such a good thing. Annie says about her dog being barking into off the bungalow. Could that be somebody? So it seems like there's a dog barking. I've also got another one here, but when you're answering that one about dogs, have you got many stories about pets picking up on spirits?
Well, pets are very empathic. I mean, to think about it, we consider that being human, that we're intelligent and more intelligent than anybody else. And we've forgotten to use our senses. But an animal is living on their senses. And you will find most animals, you'll find them sometimes looking and you'll think, what are they looking at? Or they're not happy and like the lady's dog, it'll keep barking because they can see and sense something that you can't.
Exactly.
Yeah, so it's very, very common that actually. And my dog used to be very, very aware. And I remember this client came this once and he never barked, my dog. He was a white boxer, he was big, big lad. He never barked, but he always let me know when something wasn't quite right. And if a client came in, he would greet them. He'd be lovely to see them. And then he'd just go and lay in his basket while I worked. And that was it. And this person came in and he would not leave them alone. And he went round and round the table and he kept going up to them, not offensively. And I just looked at him and I thought, something's not right. So I just said to him, it's quite all right. I can see it. And as soon as I said that, he went to sit in his basket. And this person, I actually stopped the sitting. And this person, who was a male, actually looked at me afterwards and he went, oh, you're not worried about working here on your own? Mm-hmm. Quick as a flash, I said, well, what makes you think I'm on my own? Because I actually had, family upstairs. Yeah, I thought, you're a bit weird. You're a bit creepy. And he sort of compounded it by ringing me up the next day and trying to start a conversation and chatting. So I can see why I wasn't getting the information and why it was cut, because my spirit guides were like, this needs to stop. And my dog is definitely letting me know something's not right. So they are very aware. Never dismiss them.
Oh, yeah. I completely agree with you there. We got one here. Annie, if possible, could you answer this, please? My grandson is three. 5 times a month he wakes up in the middle of the night and says to his dad, look there, there's daddy, but my son can't see anything. I hope I read that out right.
I'm just trying to work it out, actually.
Yeah.
Oh, right, okay. So the grandson. I wonder how old the grandson is.
So I wonder if the grandson's 3 and then 5 times a month. If you can just reiterate that, just to make it a little more just clearer for us, and then I'm sure Cal will be able to answer better. Yeah. Is there anything you want to add to that at all?
Give me the age, that sometimes makes a difference.
Yeah.
If you could.
Yeah, if you could do that, Anne. We've got Joanne. Hi there. We have a black figure in our hall. How do we tell it to leave us alone as it scares us? We did say one thing about saying, can you leave us alone? But I guess sometimes you might get some spirits, some entities not leaving people alone. So I guess that's house cleaning. Was there anything else people can try by themselves first before needing to call in a medium?
Well, first I'd like to know if the black figure is moving and if it's in any way interacting. So a medium would be able to tell that. Because sometimes it can just be energy. It can be like emotional energy that's built up. I always see it like cobwebs in the corner of the room. And, it could be historically there. It could be, we all go through things in life and we can get a bit upset and stressed and anxious and that. And we generate that energy. And, so it could be something like that. If I was there, I would be saying and asking sort of, reasonably personal questions about, you know, what's been going on.
Yes.
And if we then ascertained that it was a spirit that was communicating, remember it's an intelligence, they will communicate with us, all right? Then I would very, very clearly tell them in no uncertain terms to leave.
Yes.
If I couldn't encourage them, and obviously we're on recording, so I'm not going to be using some of the language I might use, which would be quite strong, to tell them they're not allowed to be there. So treat it like you wouldn't open your front door and let a stranger in, would you?
No.
You'd literally say to him, well, clear off. So
Yes.
use it in that same firmness, if you like.
Indeed.
If they're not sure if it's spirit or an energy and they don't want to get anybody in, what they could do then is what we call do a sage clean of the house. And that is a sage stick that you can get that's sort of dried up and compressed. You can see them in any of these mind, body, spirit shops. And you start at either the front or the back door, and you go around the house clockwise, very slowly. Now, you set fire to this stage, so you must make sure that you have a china bowl or a metal plate underneath, because bits will drop off. You don't want to be setting fire to the house. All right, so be very careful with that. So you slowly go around, and you literally go around as much as you can. Stand in the corners if there's, you know, furniture and you can't reach. Stand under any chimneys. Let the smoke go up the chimney. Any loft, stand under the loft. Literally go around clockwise. Go back to the door that you started. Exit the door, and I always like to go like that, but that's a personal thing with me. All right, just like putting a blessing on it. So that's links with the Native American Indians who used to do in the sweat lodges of the sage, and it is just clearing energy. That's all. And the more sensitive you get to understanding what energy feels like, it's quite interesting how sometimes you can go, I just need to clean, and I do a physical clean, and then I get a sage, and I'll give my house perhaps once a year. I'll go and give it a good go, as I call it. Really make sure everything's all right.
Yeah.
And then live in the house, play your music, dance, put plants in, live. Don't allow this anxiety to come back in.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I have heard if it's more of a negative spirit, they will feed off people's anxieties.
Oh, absolutely, they will. So is this Joanne is the same person who said this black shape that stands behind her husband in the kitchen too?
Yes. Yeah.
Right.
So that's the same person. She's also said thank you a little later on as well.
Yeah. Now I get the sense that she's actually quite capable, this Joanne, all right? And I feel that she's also quite strong enough to actually be very clear with her instructions that they're not interested and to leave.
Indeed.
All right?
Yes.
I don't know whether she is, but I get that sense that she is quite capable of getting that sorted herself. So Anne's come back on, he's 3 and seeing something at night, but his dad never sees it only now. So when you, up to about the age of 3, it's very common for little ones to see spirit. All right? It's reasonably well known. If it goes past 3, the next stage is about 7 years old. If it goes past 7-year-old, when life is sort of coming in school and busy, it's normally apparent with them for most of their life then. But when you get past that 7, because of life, it can go a little bit dormant, and it might come out later on, or it might not. That will be their choice as they become an adult. So for a little one, what he's seeing, I do feel that what he's seeing is his granddad, right? But you'll often find that families in the spirit world like to sort of keep an eye on the little ones when they're asleep, right? So I don't feel he's at risk. I don't think he's a problem. I feel he's just a very sensitive child. He's very active. He's very bright because his brain keeps going. So that's my feeling about him. So I feel it's a family member that is, and then I do feel drawn to the granddad who's literally there watching over him.
Wonderful.
Right? And that should ease off with that little one, the more active he becomes. I would imagine he's quite a little bit hyperactive because it's like is quite bright, but his body isn't at the age that his brain is at, if that makes sense.
Yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Really good. So we got another question here. I see blue and white sparks of light, sometimes people and sometimes in certain rooms. I have my eyes checked. It can be anywhere, not just in my home. Is it spiritual energy? Thank you. And thank you, Michelle, for writing that.
Yeah, that's lovely. I mean, what she's seeing is spirit energy, but she's also seeing energy as well. All right. If you have those photographs taken, you know, I think it's a Kirlian machine that takes photographs of your
I know
aura.
exactly what you.
It,
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
it
Yeah.
comes out in all these different colours. So, you know, she's seeing both, I think. All right.
Yes.
And it made me smile when I was reading it, because I remember she might get the same thing here. You know, when you go to the opticians, I remember she saying, "Oh, do you see movement or lights or anything like that?" And I looked at her and I thought, how do I answer that? Because, well, yes, I do, but I'm not quite sure if it's my eyes or it's
Yes.
because I'm seeing things because of my job. So I smiled when I read it, because I thought, well, she's obviously got the same problem. But absolutely awareness. I mean, that's a lovely sensitivity. It might, if she decides to develop and she looks into it, she might find that will get enhanced and she can use it to help her in her work. Or she might find, as her other senses get stronger, that they will diminish a little bit. One of my students sees colour just like her, and it literally, she'd be looking at you, Paul, and she would literally see colour, and then it would start to form into a shape, and she would literally see spirit right over you. So it's a lovely gift for her if she wants to pursue it.
Yeah, I agree, and just said thank you, thank you, thank you. You're right. Michelle just says thank you. I thought so. I've got this person as well. Anything for me dad or one of my dear friends, plus my poor bunny passed suddenly yesterday. Are they okay? Well, I think most people end up being okay. So maybe that might be something nice. I don't know if you want to add any more to that, but something about the transition that people go through once they leave the physical realm to go through to the spirit realm, to put Mimi at rest, to know that our spirit friends, our loved ones are okay.
I'm presuming, when I'm looking at that, she's meaning that her dad has passed and some friends have passed. I'm
That's
presuming
what
that's
I'm
what she's.
getting from it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I'm presuming. Yeah. If it comes to me, because it's not like a tap, and this is not an excuse, you know, if they take the opportunity when they can, if I get to them, I'll pass it on. But to go in that more general sense about you saying about, you know, well, we know they're all right. I can only base this on my experience, because everybody will experience it different, right? In my work, I've come to that conclusion that it's been proved to me that spirit exists, because I feel them, and I know I can't make that up, because I couldn't. I'm not that bright. If it was just in my mind, I would know. I'd think, well, you're making it up. I would fight all the time. They talk about what's happened after their passing to their family members. So logically, that tells me, well, it's got to be ongoing then, isn't it? Because otherwise you'd only talk up to that point of when you passed. How do you know this has been going on? And a trained person knows the difference between psychic and mediumship. Psychic is when you're connecting and you're reading on one level, not receiving information, as I said earlier. And the other thing, in all the thousands, oh bless her, you don't need to apologise, love. And all the many thousands of sittings I've done, I've never had anybody come back and say they don't like it. So I've got to think, well, whatever it is, and however it, and however we perceive it, it can't be that bad, because I've got family over there, and they would tell me, I can assure you, if there was anything wrong. So those three things to me, on a logical way, have been proved to me. All right.
Good.
So I look on it, if I put my hands up here, we've got the physical world and we've got the spirit world. And in between, we got that, I call it a little bit of no man's land. All right. Now, depending on a person's mindset, religious belief, whatever, they may be in that little, what I call that no man's land. And so sometimes they may need a little bit of a prayer, a little bit of a talking to, a little bit of understanding to help them pass over into the spirit realms properly. Some people never even know that's there. They go literally from one place to the other. Literally from being bedridden, suddenly they're like this. And it's like, you're falling asleep and you wake up in Australia going, well, what happened and where am I? Because actually I feel fine. Because spirit themselves and the family in the spirit world, as well as the spirit helpers, will do their best to prepare a person. Now, we're talking about preparing on a spiritual level, all right? We're talking about the person's spirit, which can be quite different from their physical and their mindset and their life. So you will find quite often there's been a lot of work of healing to help that transition. And us in this physical world, and, we have family members, we can help that. Because we don't have to pray. We don't have to get on our knees and pray, with all due respect. We can just give our love and bring that calmness, bring that reassurance. Carry on treating anybody in that stage of their life exactly as they've always been. And it also gives us a chance, if we want to take it, that perhaps we can bring a little bit of healing to any issues there may have been. Because the person in the physical has to go forward with not just the grief, but sometimes they get the guilt and they wish things had been fixed beforehand. And then they have to carry that. There's enough carrying the guilt without having to carry anything else. So sometimes in the physical, it's about how you rise above certain things. That's not making you holier than now. It's about how will you feel in the future.
Indeed.
But it's not about lying, and it's not about papering cracks over for falseness, because if it's something that is so broken that it shouldn't be fixed and it can never be fixed, you've got to live with the honesty of that.
Of course, that's good
Yeah.
words. And I'll leave it up for now. I was going to get it, but because I've got a question here, Mimi says that's very comforting, and a little kiss at the end. I will ask this. Sorry, do you want to say something else?
Well, yeah, she's talked about her rabbit, and I just wanted to add to that. And
Yes.
years ago, when I saw a very, very good medium when I was training, he was in trance. And I always remember what he brought through. That our pets that we have, who we love, we help create their own individual spirit. So they are still part of the family in the spirit world. But most of us haven't got like an elephant or a tiger for a pet.
No.
So that individual spirit isn't quite the same, and it goes into what they call a group soul. I in no way can prove that. It did make a bit of sense to me, but I trusted the way it was brought forward because I could see his guides working and bringing the information.
Yes.
So if you have that pet, so that little rabbit will be very much still part of the family.
Yeah, indeed. What I want to add now, I'm going to get this one up for later, because I think that's an important one, because I think so many people will be feeling like Wendy's feeling now.
Yeah.
I just thought, well, I get to ask this one first, as it's an important one, because I don't want to miss it, and then we'll talk about your CDs and how people can get in contact and join your circles and where they can see you. So if we answer Wendy's question first, I'll just leave it up and then go on to something else. I just think it'd be better that way. So Wendy says here, I fell out with my father and sister for many years. Both of them died. I feel so sad. I'd like to contact them. I'm sure that's something that you must come across all the time, and if you can offer some words of comfort and what people can do at this stage.
Yeah, I mean, I get a lot of that. People in the spirit coming back. And actually, what Wendy needs to remember is the situation that caused that falling out. You know, it's not just about her, they would have been part responsible as well. You know, a misunderstanding is grown and mushroomed because, you know, people get stubborn, resentful, or hurt, and anything like that. And then time goes on and it gets such a gap that it's hard, you know, the fracture comes and it's hard to go back and fix it. So she has to remember it's not all on her shoulders, right? Because quite often the family will come back and they got a bit more knowledge, a bit more understanding. They see things a bit clearer. They don't suddenly become angels with wings, and you know, oh, we're wonderful. They're not, but they have that chance, as we do in this world, to evolve and to understand and take responsibility. And I have more often than not family members who come back and apologise. And some of the recipients said, well, they don't need to apologise. I understand. I said, no, but they need to. They need to for themselves. So I feel if she went to see somebody, because I feel quite strongly that she would get an element of that. But I keep stressing she must remember that it wasn't all on her shoulders.
Exactly.
Really wasn't. All right. But if she doesn't want to go and see anybody, and she needs to, because she needs to move this emotion, because that's not good for her. All right. She could just sit quietly and think of them and mentally apologise for what she feels she needs to apologise for. Because if she sits there and thinks about it, she'll realise actually that wasn't all me. Do you know what I mean? But don't let's wrap it up in roses and make it something that it's not. But if she sits quietly, like I said, she could mentally send that thought out and they will hear it. And they will know. But for her sake, for her to go forward, that needs to be released.
Good. Yeah,
Right.
and I hope that really helps you, Wendy. What I will bring into now is you've got 2 CDs. I think it's 2 CDs people can purchase. What's on those 2 CDs, and if people want to either see you do platform, see you individually for one-to-one house clearing, or to join your
My
development circle. So if you can remember all that, we'll start with the CDs to begin with.
Well, you know, Paul, it's so long ago, and I keep, you know those lists of jobs that you're always, oh, I'm going to do that and I'm going to do that. So it's so long ago since I've done, and I did 2 CDs. One's called Opening to Spirit. So when I did my workshops, I give people a copy of that because it's a guided meditation that takes you through opening chakras, takes you through a process that you connect very lightly with a guide, but you also meet a family member and then it brings you back down. So it's just a process of opening up, that's all. But most important, closing down too. We have to remember we live in this world. And we have the right to live in this world. And, you know, as you know, I like my glass of wine. So that's the one CD. And the other one is called Q&A, like questions and answers. And that's, again, another guided meditation. But what I do, I take you into a space and into a room. And there's this book. And it's like you're asking yourself, basically, you know, when we all get a bit chaotic and we can't make a decision, we can't make our mind up. And it's like takes you into the space that you ask the question, turn the page and go with the very, very first thing that comes into your mind. Now, if it's a convoluted question, it doesn't matter how many times you do it, break it down into small sound bites. So that's basically what that CD is. So, and as I said, I keep meaning to do some more. I've got loads of things going around in my head, but I never quite find the time to do it. So yeah, I do classes and I do them in 10-week terms. Right, and I've had some students with me for several years, so you might think, well, she can't be very good because they're still with her. But one of the advanced groups, I had to change the title so that we could explore other options. I mean, it always used to be called the Advanced Mediumship Development, but now I call it the Spiritual Awareness and Mediumship Development, purely because there are so many elements to this work once you start looking into it. So many questions, so much beautiful philosophy, and you just exploring and stretching and not limiting yourself. So it's a bit of a challenge sometimes to always make it a bit different. So every week, so I do 3 terms a year, 10 weeks at a time, and they're for an hour and a half, and that's on a Monday morning, and then on a Tuesday evening, and these are on Zoom. I do what I call the beginners and the intermediates, where we're doing the more basic practical and building up, and then you can get a chance. If you can't make one week, you can slot into the other group so that you don't lose the time. And when they're ready, I just move them over more to the advanced group. So you're assessing, because I've got some fabulous students who should be out there working, but a lot of the time it's like lifestyle, family commitments, confidence. That's the big one, getting the confidence. So when we were physically doing the work, I used to take them out in a group where we have like fledglings evenings, so they can practice in a safe space. And then I would take them out one at a time with me. When the people at the church, because I always take them to the church, and people say, oh, I don't want to go to church, I'm not religious. And it's actually not that. It's such good grounding. And don't forget, mediumship comes under the label of spiritualism, which is a legal religion in this country. I think it's the second legal one. People tend to forget that because they go for the what I call the showmanship and the glitz and everything. Yes, we've got to have a laugh. Yes, you've got to enjoy it. Come along. We don't need to be really, really serious. Yes. But we also have to steer away from what I call the end of the pier.
Yeah, exactly.
The wonderful Billy Cook, who some people may have heard of, he said it has to be entertaining, but it's not entertainment. So I think it's a pretty good sentence, isn't it? All right. So those groups are on a Tuesday evening, and that's again for an hour and a half. I do a trance group on a Wednesday, but that is a closed group because it's, you've got to be a bit more careful. And I firmly believe personally that you've got to have some level of medium experience to be able to sit for trance, because I go back again to that discipline. You're in charge of this, so you have to know the effect it's having on you. I started in the lockdown doing some workshops, and I do a series of 4, normally on a Saturday morning for about 2.5 hours. And I literally do what I call the mechanics. So I do the breakdown. First session is all about energy, interspersed with exercises. Second one is about getting to know your guides, again with exercises. Third one, we're doing the mix of psychic and mediumship. And the fourth one is more the same, but we talk about delivery and the law, insurance and everything like that. All the boring businessy stuff that you've got to be aware of for your own protection. Yeah. So that's how I do those. I wrote it down because I thought I'll never remember. Like I said, I do public dems. Some of them I put on myself. Some I get invited to. I do a couple of charity ones. Depending on what it's for, right? Because you can't keep doing it all the time. I'm getting on a bit now.
Surely not.
I have to pace myself a bit. And I love demonstrating. I think there must be a little bit of an actress, a showman or something, or perhaps it's my ego, I don't know. But I really do, because the people that come, they're just also smashed. They're just lovely, They may have been dragged there. They may have come because they're interested. They may be workers, but no 2 nights are the same. And you always know when you've turned up for that one message that makes a difference. And any medium will tell you that one message, when you go home, you're perfectly satisfied and you think, I've done my job.
Yes.
Because it touches you. You've helped somebody. So I love demonstrating for various reasons, but that is one of them. I do apologize for looking at my list. I love going to do the churches because I love the philosophy. So we call it inspirational speaking. And it's where our team comes through and impresses us, and we just talk for about 15 minutes. And as you can tell, because I keep talking, that's not a hardship, is it?
Absolutely. And I like interviewing and chatting with people that like to talk. If they don't like to talk, that's kind of a difficult show to begin with.
yeah, you're a bit awkward. And then, like I said, I do spirit and entity clearing. that can be people, places, areas, you know, it's whatever is brought to me. I've seen some fascinating stuff, but again, you've got to keep checking. You've got to make sure that you're not deluding. I did go to a place once, bless, and then the only time in the whole of my career I actually made spirit up, because this person was so freaked out. They were so convinced that I won't go into details in case they see it, but they showed things that they said they'd seen, they'd recorded, and sounds and everything like that. I mean, they just weren't sleeping. They weren't even living there. They couldn't bear to be in the house. Wow. So I went round with my colleague, and we both joined up, and we both went, well, there's nothing here. Well, we can't say that because that's not going to help.
Yes.
So I literally had to make it up because I needed to reassure this person.
Yes.
Need them to feel safe, need them to know, give them something to do if they got anxious. All right. And they were obviously not in a good space in their life. So it's all about how can you reassure this person? So they'll come back into their home and then perhaps give them some tips and some guidance. And I noticed that they had an Archangel Michael statue. So I said, always call on Archangel Michael because that's the great protector. So I didn't feel too guilty about making it up because the intent and the reason for it was what was trying to bring benefit. But I have to say, it's the only time I've done it.
Yeah. And have you heard from them since? I mean, did they sort of say that they felt better after you went through that process?
Well, you very rarely ever hear from them again, if it's all right. Yeah. So that's good.
Good.
And it was years and years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Brilliant. But no, I think you did the absolutely right thing there. And I have got your website in the description of this video, both on Facebook and YouTube. Is that the best way of people getting in contact with you, is through your website?
You can do it through the website. My phone number's on there, my mobile number. It's always easy. I do get problems, as we mentioned earlier on, with my electrics. Sometimes I'm always losing my Outlook account and things don't appear where they should. So, fail safe is often usually phone or leave a text message. That's probably the quicker way to do it, because I'd be honest, I do get a bit drowning with it coming in from all different directions. And I'm not very organised for an ex-PA.
Well, it can be quite, I mean, I think it's best as well from personal, just to have a few social medias going rather than like 10 different social medias going, because it just gets too confusing.
Yeah.
I have got this question here, and I do apologise for those that I haven't said hi to and those I haven't asked the questions, because there are lots scrolling up in the corner here. Jules says, have you any tips how I can open up and connect more in my open circle at the Spiritualist Church, please?
Well, I have, but I've got to also be a bit responsible here, because I don't know the circumstances on what it's like,
of course,
even though it's a Spiritualist church, and I don't know the lady as in how it could affect. I'd go back to that basic bit where I said, know your own energy and be disciplined about keeping yourself closed when you're not working. A quick way of opening up is to concentrate on your heart chakra. And as most people in the business know, we see that, as a green colour. And we're talking about unconditional love, not emotional love. There's a vast difference between the two. So in this work, you need to be doing the unconditional love. And imagine it stretching out, right, around you. So when you stretch your heart, all your other chakra systems will open up automatically. It's just a quick way of doing it, all right? But I have to repeat, for her and anybody else's benefit, when you have finished working, remember to reverse the process, put that protective shield around you, and feel your feet very, very firmly on the floor. because you're back in this world and we have a right to our own life. You cannot be keeping connecting to the spirit world all the time.
And I think this was an earlier one, but I'm just pulling it up now. Jane was asking, so what happens when there is a go and you get left behind? So I'm assuming from this question, Jane, that what can happen if you open up and you don't shut down?
Well, it can affect you in different ways. You can feel a little bit out of balance. It depends on the sensitivity of the person, right? And how far they've opened. So you can feel a little bit out of balance and a little bit off kilter. So it can affect you, in a physical and energetic sense. For very, very sensitive people, you can open up and it's like inviting the spirit world to join you. And if you've got no discipline and you haven't set up your guides or anything like that, well, any Tom Cobley can come through, can't they?
Yeah.
So it's not to frighten people. It is to reiterate the fact that this is a process that we work with. It's not some airy-fairy thing that, aren't we lucky I speak to, the angels. And I know that may annoy a lot of people, but I make no apologies for that because I've seen too many people literally deluded, and it can affect their human life as a form of escapism. So this is a process that you, as a human being, when you're developing, you work with it and you do the best you can. Not about being the best, it's about being the best you can. There are some brilliant mediums out there, very, very humble people that you're never going to see on the TV or in, some newspaper article or anything like that, and they just turn up and do their job each week and bring so much comfort to people. But they are very good and they're very honest. Best compliment I ever had was, "You're honest," and I thought, I'll take that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't want to be the best. I want to be the best I can be for me, but I don't want to be the best in the world because that's never going to happen. Right? Because that's ego, isn't it? But to go back to that question, with the discipline and the commitment and really, really pushing yourself a little bit, you will never put yourself in that position of opening up so that you get affected. And at any point, as you learn to know what you feel like, that you feel a little bit, I feel a bit wobbly, just go outside, stand on the grass, stand on the floor, literally rub your feet. So again, it's that slightly psychological bit of anchoring yourself.
Absolutely. And Jules just put here, brilliant, Carol. Yes, we do protection at the end.
Oh, good.
It's a brilliant little spiritualist church.
Yeah.
We'll definitely try that next Tuesday. Kind of jumping around a little bit in time here, but I know you went to various places in London, but I also heard you said you were reading a lot of books on spiritualism and books about spirit. Are there any books that you can just remember off the top of your head now that if somebody is interested in just reading, because I guess some people as well, they might not want to think, I want to be a medium. They just might be absolutely fascinated and want to know more. So any books that spring to mind, you think that would be a really good one to put on their shelf? Or read, best than just on shelf.
Yeah, don't put it on the shelf and leave it there.
Yeah.
Which is what, to be perfectly honest, Paul, that's what a lot of us do. We talk about these books. Oh yeah, we must get that, so we buy it, and then we put it on the shelf. We're so busy doing so, we forget to read it. But there was a book I know I had almost at the beginning. It was called Mediumship Made Simple by Ivy Northridge. I think you can still get it. Be very, very careful that you don't get trapped into some of these sites that charge you a fortune because they're out of issue. All right. But that was a good book. And a lot of the ones by the wonderful Gordon Smith, one of my favourite mediums, are very worth reading. All right. Yeah. But if you want to go down a little bit more on the slightly scientific, there's a book called by Alan Kardec, Allan, I think it is, Kardic. It's quite expensive and it's quite old. So it's the style of words is a little bit old. And that is called The Medium's Book. and that'll take some reading, but that's quite interesting to watch that. All of my favourite philosophy books are Silver Birch, and anybody in this business will know exactly what I'm talking about. Simple philosophy of spiritualism, which a lot of people forget is what underpins this work and is the most important part of this work.
We're coming very close to the 90-minute mark, so I'm going to just finish with 2 questions, and thank you everybody that's watching. I do apologise for those that I haven't said hello to, but I have been seeing you pop up. Hello, and thank you everybody who's been watching tonight. So the first question is going to be, now some of us want to develop more spiritually and develop psychic skills, and other of us just want to be the best version of ourselves that we can be. So from your teaching, whether you want to go down the route of medium psychic development or whether you just want to be the best version of yourself, is there any meditation or any process that you do regularly in your classes that you think would help anybody, no matter what your belief system is?
Oh, wow. That's a question you might as well have another hour, Paul. Actually.
Yeah.
Wow. In this field, we often talk about sitting in the power or sitting in the light. And it's taking that little bit of time out of the day just to sit quiet. You're not sort of connecting with spirit and asking questions all the time. You're not saying, you know, oh, can you help me do this? And I want that. And I want, you're not doing that. You're just sitting in that beautiful space and you're really balancing your energy. And it's finding that part where you can switch off sometimes. People think we always have to do something, but actually it's the pause and that stop. And it's refreshing to you as your physical body and your mental well-being, but it's also from a point of view of developing, it's a good discipline to get into. I'm not talking about sitting and meditating for an hour, right? Some people it suits, some people it doesn't. And I know some workers, before they go on to demonstrate, they've got their earphones and they're listening to the music and getting themselves in the space. I have to admit, I am absolutely rubbish at doing that. It doesn't work for me because my body isn't built like that. My mindset isn't built like that. So I'm normally out the back singing to Tina Turner and dancing around and being stupid, because that builds my energy up. So it's learning to know what works for you, but to stretch who you are, to find that balance within inside. I would suggest, even if it's only for 5 minutes, sit in the power, go into the quiet, switch off, and that'll be refreshing on many levels.
Brilliant. And final question is what I've always asked every single interview I've ever done, whether it's been saying on this field or whether it's been interviewing a jazz musician, just right at the end I always say, is there anything that I haven't asked you that you think is important that you would like to finish with?
Oh, absolutely. Thousands of questions, Paul. I don't know where to start. No, it's not so much that you haven't asked a question. I think perhaps what I would like everybody to take on board is try to relax. Don't push yourself. It's not a competition. Take your time to get there, but also enjoy it, because we work with a miracle, and it's a miracle that we can prove. And some days you'll be better than others. You know, some days you'll be really sharp, and another day you might pull your hair out and think, oh, I'm packing this in. But if you go with the right intent and you go with that commitment, you will not only grow self, but you will grow your craft. And I wish everybody who was listening who was doing that, I really wish them the best of luck. And I hope they, as frustrated as it can be sometimes, I hope they enjoy and get as much from the journey as I have.
Brilliant. That's an absolutely lovely way to finish it. Thank you so much, Carol. Thank you everybody that's been watching tonight. You know, we can watch this video anytime. You've got Carol's website in the description, so you'll be able to find information about Carol on there. Next week we have Alex, who's a podcaster, author, and her podcast is called The Spooky Stuff. So that's the same time next week. Again, lots of thank yous. Thank you again, Cal. You've been absolutely amazing tonight.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Paul, and everybody else.
I'm just going to close this off now, and you want just 2 or 3 minutes just before finishing off, just so I can thank you again before going. Is that okay?
Oh yes, please do.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful
Bye.
rest of your night, and the next time tomorrow.
God bless.